Today we explore a life-size model of the ancient tabernacle. We find out what Jesus was writing in the sand, and we swim with dolphins. And it all starts right now. We're at Timna Park here in the south of Israel, and we're speaking with Allison, who is one of the guides here, at a really incredible place. This is, as far as we know, a two-scale model of the tabernacle built by Moses during the time of the Exodus.
During the time of the Exodus, yes.
Okay, and we're talking to scale approximately in feet or meters. What's the size of the outer area of the tabernacle?
Okay, so the outer courtyard was 100 by 50 cubits of the cubit, and this is built on a 50 centimeter cubit. So
Okay.
It's more or less the size.
Okay, so we can actually walk through the tabernacle area.
Yes.
Let's
You're
do
most
that.
welcome.
I would love to go through this. Oh, wow. It's larger in here than I thought it was going to be for some reason. I just spent weeks going through the entire Torah, and reading all the details and make it this big and this wide. And the first thing I'm struck by is this here, which is the altar.
Yeah, 5 by 5 and 3 high. It's true, that's when I first came here, it was like, wow. it was, before that, it's just figures in your head.
Yeah.
And once you come here, it's like, now you can picture it and actually see what they had, what the priests and Levites would have seen.
Yeah.
Well, the second item after the altar, of course, was the wash basin for cleansing. And of course, the altar had wooden base with copper, but this was pure copper with no wood. And of course, running water was kept in here.
Very important, living
Very
water.
important, yeah.
When I read through the book of Exodus and Leviticus, and you get through all of the descriptions of the sizes and everything, it's really hard as a North American or anyone outside of this land, to really put it in your mind how large things are.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying to you, this thing must have been really, really solid and heavy to carry.
Yeah, we don't have the size, but definitely we know they had a frame that they had to put underneath in order to be able to carry it. But all the items actually would have been heavy, because it's not just the item, but this heavy animal skin that was over it as well,
okay.
because nobody was allowed to look at any of the holy items as they traveled.
Wow. I can't imagine how beautiful this would have looked, because this is, obviously fake gold. But in the time of the Bible, when God instructed them to build this, these were solid slabs of gold, or faced.
Panels, yeah, faced panel gold, yes. Yes.
I mean, when the sun hit it right, it must have been just absolutely
Amazing.
Stunning.
It's unimaginable.
Unimaginable. Well, in here we have 3 main elements, and maybe we can start here with this table. What would this be?
This was the showbread table. It was acacia wood covered with the gold, and of course had the 12 unleavened breads, representing the bread of presence in the Bible, it's called, before God's face. Of course, in the New Testament, it's quite clear in John that this represented Messiah,
Right.
the bread of life.
Okay, so that's the table of showbread. And then here we have the menorah.
Right.
And I think most people would know what it represents, but maybe you could just tell us real quick what it represents.
Also, it has no wood and no measurements, so we don't know the actual size at all.
Okay.
It's not. They were just told to build a menorah from a solid piece of gold to 7 branches,
Okay.
with the oil lamps along the top. So we know the description, but not the size.
Okay.
So like the altar outside, this had to burn all the time. It's
All the time.
eternal flame. So every evening and morning they'd have to refill the oil and trim the wicks, because they had to keep burning.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 major meanings in this. Of course, Christ said he's the light of the world. This was the only light. But then in Isaiah chapter 11 verse 2, you have the 7 spirits of God, or attributes mentioned. And again in Revelation, we see it 3 times mentioned, the 7 spirits of God. So if this is a representation of God's Holy Spirit, again, it's interesting, no measurements.
Okay.
So it's, and of course, a lot, along with water and the Word, oil and spirit are often interchanged.
Okay, so we have the showbread, we have the menorah, and then we come to this final piece here, we call it the altar of incense in English,
or golden
is that correct?
altar. Yes, it's correct. It's either the altar of incense or the golden altar, because the other one, of course, was copper. And of course, again, though, it's acacia wood covered with gold. And the coals could only come from the altar outside, because they were paid for by the blood, And it was God who started that fire originally. So again, every evening and morning, hot coals and a special mix of incense.
Very good, okay. And then we come to the final stage, the final curtain, and when we go through there, we see the Holy of Holies.
Yes.
Okay. Oh wow, again, to see it like this in its life size, man, it's larger than I thought it was going to be. So this is the final place. This is the holy place.
The Holy of Holies, yes.
And this, okay, again, all the people are camped outside. Only the Levites, not only, but the Levites would minister in that outer area.
Yes.
And the priest and the high priest, if he wanted to, would minister in this area with the showbread, the menorah, and the altar of incense. But only the high priest, one day a year, could come into here, right?
Yeah, only on Yom Kippur, and only dressed in white. He didn't wear his, every day he wore his high priestly garments in the Holy of Holies. On Yom Kippur he dressed only in white. And he would first have to bring incense to make a smoke, because he's expressly entering God's presence.
Wow.
So it said, lest he die, first the incense.
Amazing.
And then the blood, first for the bull for him, and then the goat blood for the nation of Israel.
Okay, and then is it okay to slide this back to show everybody?
To show what was inside. So of course the stone tablets of the law were in here.
No, these are the actual 10 Commandments, right?
Yes, in modern Hebrew, in concrete. Concrete in modern Hebrew.
Okay.
So, and we don't know the size. Of course, they had to have been small enough to fit in size inside the ark that we do know.
Okay. You know, as we were walking through this, Allison, a real clear picture started to form. There was 3 distinct, gates or curtains that we had to pass through. Now, I've heard this before, but I've never been able to really, not to prove it, but to get, any teaching behind it. We had to come in through the first gate, and then it was a second gate, and then it was a third gate, and then before you know it, you're in God's presence. You're in the Father's presence. Now, Jesus in the New Testament, he says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life, and no one can get to the Father unless he comes through me. And we see the altar of sacrifice right smack in the middle. Do you think, or are we pushing it to say that Jesus might have been, kind of digging, kind of referring the Pharisees back to the tabernacle of Moses?
They knew exactly what he was saying when he said this. So yes, it's very clear that he referred to this coming through these 3 curtains. And of course, they perfectly well knew the order of the holy items and the progression of coming back to the Father and the duties connected with each one.
And we see this, and time again, when we read the Bible, if we don't, and you guys, you're gonna get sick of hearing this, I say this almost every week, to understand Yeshua, Jesus, we need to understand the Hebraic background, the Hebraic culture, the world in which he lived. And as Christians, it's so sad sometimes, we've lost a lot of the pictures, the beauty of his teachings, because we've kind of thrown out the baby with the bathwater, and because of some of the anti-Semitism and some of that replacement theology that's come into the church, we've thrown it away. But this is a clear example of how Jesus used the religion of the day, the expectations of the people of the day, and he says, I am the way, I'm the truth, and I'm the life. And if you want to get into the presence of the Father, then you've got to come through me. And when he says that, I mean, here's this honkin', this huge altar of sacrifice right in the middle. And Allison, I want to thank you for taking time. I know we could have spent hours here going through this. And this is just a tease, just a little taste of what you can have if you're able to come with us one time on our trips to Israel. You can easily add an extension onto Eilat, and this is not even a half hour. From Eilat, you can come here. You can go through the whole tour, which is about 40 minutes or so.
About 40 minutes.
And not just the actual teachings, but you can also get the symbolic teachings and how Christ fulfills all these elements of the tabernacle. So I would encourage you to join us here on a tour of Israel, and God willing, if you're able, to come and see this tabernacle for yourself. We'll be back right after this. Coming up, we look at the Feast of Tabernacles, and we see if there are any clues to help us understand what Jesus was writing in the sand. And still later, we're going to swim with dolphins.
God's Holy Days, the new DVD teaching series by Joe Amaral. Filmed in a conference speaking environment, infused with rich visuals such as photos and realistic video reenactments, this series will take you on an exciting journey of discovery. In God's Holy Days, you'll learn the meaning behind many symbolic parallels that have long been forgotten by the church. find out why most Western believers have little knowledge of these feasts and how much there is to gain once we understand them. This 3.5-hour teaching series will show you how Jesus is both concealed and revealed in the Feast of the Lord, from Passover through Tabernacles. You'll be amazed as Joe describes in detail how these feasts can still powerfully apply to all believers everywhere. Included with the purchase of this DVD is a 7-week study guide to help you personally apply these many truths. To order your copy, call right now, 1-877-628-2800.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the tour that we had of the Tabernacle in Timna. It was awesome to be able to walk through the site, and again, just to kind of get the perspective of where things were, how large the altar was, and the inner chamber of the Holy of Holies and the holy place. That was really, really cool. And when we got thinking about what to do for the teaching today, I said, hey, we talked about the Tabernacle, which was the temporary dwelling. It was the temporary temple, and everywhere they went, every time they camped, they had to build it and tear it down. But literally, just in behind these walls, not very far at all, we have the ruins of where the actual temple used to stand, where King Solomon, of course, began to build. And then later on, in the 1st century, it was finished by King Herod. And there's a story that takes place at the temple. There's actually a lot of stories, of course, in the New Testament, in the Gospel especially, that talk about Jesus having particular activities, miracles, teachings, things that he does in the temple. And a lot of times, as a Christian audience, we don't understand all the surrounding background. And that's really, really important. So important, in fact, that we decided to start this television program so that we could teach you the Hebraic roots of the Christian faith. Because knowing the background to the stories, understanding the festivals, there's some watching right now who are saying, what festivals? Are you talking about Christmas and Easter? Well, no, I'm talking about festivals and holidays that were in place during the time of Jesus. Actually, in the book of John, in chapter 10, it even talks about Jesus going to the temple here to celebrate Hanukkah. That's probably a surprise for a lot of people. You don't think of Jesus and these Jewish festivals, as they're called. Well, we've talked about in God's Holy Days, in a special DVD that I have, and on past teachings, that they're not the feasts of the Jews, they're the feasts of the Lord. And today I want to talk about an event that takes place actually during one of the feasts. And if we don't know what the feast is, if we don't understand what the practices were, if we don't understand what the traditions of the holiday were, then a lot of times we don't get the full impact of what Jesus was doing on that day. Now in John chapter 7, verse 37, he says something there that a lot of us really don't take into consideration. We don't factor it in when we're trying to understand or disassemble what's going on in that time. John says that on the last and greatest day of the feast that Jesus went to the temple. Stop. A lot of us get to that verse and we say, we know what? Do we really need to know what day it was? John, why don't you just say that Jesus went to the temple? Why do you got to be so specific all the time? Why do you have to say it was on the last day? And not just the last day, but the great day? Well, it's because a lot of us who are Christians, who are Gentiles, we don't understand the importance of the day that he's talking about. Well, first of all, we need to figure out, well, what holiday, what festival is he referring to? Well, the truth is, there's only one festival that has the last and a great day. Now, some of you might have heard the teaching before, you might have seen it on God's Holy Days, you might have heard me in a church, so no cheating, don't tell the person you're sitting with what it is. What is the feast? What is the day that has that great day? The Feast of Tabernacles. And that's a holiday that Christians really haven't heard a lot about. But John is very specific, and he says, no, you need to know. He didn't just kind of meander into the temple. He took his time coming from Nazareth. He stopped here, he stopped there. No, he timed his walking so that when he left Nazareth, he would get to Jerusalem on the last day of this feast. Why? Because there were very specific things that would happen on that day. Now, on this day, there was something called the water libation ceremony. Now, before I tell you that, what did Jesus say in this passage? He said, drink of me, and you'll never thirst again. And on the way down from the Galilee, he stops and he has that conversation with the woman at the well in Samaria, again, just not too far from here. And he says, let me give you water, and if you drink of this water, you'll never thirst again. So all of a sudden, during this festival, this Sukkot, this Tabernacles holiday, he starts to talk about living water a lot. Why is that? Well, I want to address that right now for you guys. On this last day of this great feast, the high priest would leave the altar area, and he would go down to the bottom of the mount there, and he would go to the pool of Siloam, which was filled with living water. Living water has three sources: springs, rivers, and rain. And he would go down there with an empty container, and then he would dip it into the pool, and he would fill it with living water. He'd bring it back to the temple area. And during a time of prayer, the priest would take that jug, and you could almost, if you just close your eyes for a second, you can see it as he pours that water on the altar, and you hear that large splash sound, and everybody's silent. And when they hear that water splashing, it's an outward expression of an innermost prayer saying, God, send us your living water. Now this happened every day, but on the last day is when they expected God's living water to appear. And imagine, as the priest is pouring out that water, that's when Jesus comes in through the temple area and he says, I'm the living water. He was saying, what you're asking God for is right here in front of you, it's me. Now that's a huge wow moment there. But what happens next? Do the people accept Jesus as the living water? Do they accept him as the Messiah? No, unfortunately, that's not what happened. But the truth is that they kick him out of that temple area, out of the inner court where the men were, into the outer court where the women were. Now, on the way in to this temple that day, what did Jesus encounter? Remember, on the way out, he was cast out and he meets a woman who's caught in the act of adultery. And there he's questioned by the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, and they say to him, well, we know what the law of Moses says we should do, but what do you say we should do with this woman? And then Jesus does something very bizarre, right? He doesn't respond verbally. He does something actually very rabbinic. He hints, in Hebrew called remez. He stoops down into the dust, it says, and he begins to write. He begins to doodle. And people now, for centuries, for 2,000 years, are asking, what in the world did Jesus write in the sand? If you know the feast, there's actually an answer. Now, we need to keep in mind that this is a first century Jewish audience. And when Jesus writes in the sand, he's being very rabbinic in his method. And when he writes, he's actually pointing to something. He's pointing to a portion of Scripture, and this is what it says here. O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of the living water. Did you get what was written there? That those who reject the Lord, the source of the living water, will be written in the dust. You see, Jesus came that day. He claimed to be the living water of God. And the men rejected him, enter the outer court where the woman was. He stoops down and he begins to write their names in the dust. Immediately their minds would have went to that Jeremiah passage. This is just one of those many wow moments that the Hebraic roots can bring to us as Christians. And we can't continue in arrogance or in ignorance, but we've got to go back to the first century to understand that mindset. Because when we do, guys, and only when we do we fully understand what he meant. You know, it's not that we misunderstand Jesus. I think we just don't fully understand. And as followers of Yeshua, followers of Jesus, the one who is the living water, it is important for us to go back to that time to understand and to learn, even to know about the feasts and the holidays, to know what was going on in the background. How can we fully embrace the teachings? You know, we're not just New Testament people. That's really actually wrong to say, but we're Bible teachers. We accept the Word of God. That doesn't include just the Gospels or just the New Testament, but it also includes what we call the Old Testament. And as we go back to the Old Testament, as we go back to that time, guys, and we begin to learn about the Hebraic roots, man, the words of Jesus come alive. And that is my hope and my prayer for you today. Next, we go swimming with dolphins in the Red Sea, and we're going to meet an exciting and amazing ministry. That's all coming up on First Century Foundations.
For 2,000 years, man has been studying the life and words of Jesus. But in our modern culture, can we truly understand what he really meant? Now we can. Joe Amaril's book, Understanding Jesus, removes the veil of history and brings us greater understanding of the time and culture that Jesus and the authors of the Bible lived in. In Understanding Jesus, we study the Feast of the Lord as Jesus celebrated them and find valuable insights into God's prophetic timetable throughout history. Knowing more about his ancient culture will give you accurate insight of the teachings of Jesus and will take your faith to a whole new level. This life-changing book can be yours for just $20. Call today and order your copy of Understanding Jesus by Joe Amaral 1-877-628-2800 or visit us online at www.firstcentury.tv.
There are a lot of reasons why I love Israel, but one of the greatest reasons why I love Israel is because the places, the names, and the people of the Bible, they actually begin to pop to life. You know, you can read about the Red Sea all you want. You can read through the Old Testament, you can watch the Ten Commandments and all these movies about that time period, but there's nothing quite like actually coming to the site and seeing it for yourself. Now, the water didn't part, but we got to do something really cool. We got to swim with dolphins. People, they know Jerusalem, they know the Temple Mount and all the holy sites, but they don't think about jet skiing, they don't think about jeeping, they don't think about snorkeling and diving. And we're here with Mohan, who's been our tour guide.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've never had a water tour guide before, so that was a lot of fun. Okay, now tell me, what water are we in? Everybody knows that Israel has the Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan River, the Mediterranean, but this is what?
This is the Red Sea.
The Red Sea, very popular. We know it in the Bible, right, from the story of the Exodus,
Exactly.
right, way down in Egypt, but this is the more northern part of the Red Sea.
Yeah, just the beginning of the bay.
Yes. Now, you were telling us a little bit about the dolphins. How many dolphins are there here in the reef area?
There are 8 dolphins here, type bottlenose.
Okay.
We have 6 females and 2 males. The males are very young. 2 of them came from the Red Sea, actually, from the Black Sea,
From the
in
Black
Russia.
Sea. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this is the second generation. We have left 2 from the Black Sea. There used to be 6, I think. And all these here are newborn.
Okay. Now, when people come here, what do? They pay their fee. They come on. They put on these very beautiful wetsuits, and then what do? What's your job with them?
Okay. They come to a briefing. We explain to them about the snorkel, how we do it, about the dolphins, how we communicate underwater. Then we dress them up. We give them the wetsuits,
Right.
the fins, the goggles.
Yeah.
Then we enter from there to this whole area, swimming around. And if we're lucky, normally we see dolphins doing their things, mating, playing, fighting, hunting.
Yeah. Well, we were very fortunate today. You can see how the dolphins, they came right by us, only a few feet away.
Yeah.
And you said if we're lucky, we'll get to see them in their natural. We saw them do some natural things in the water just beside us, but it was so much fun. It was so exciting to be able to be that close to the dolphins. And I never noticed that they like to float on their back a lot and swim backwards near the ocean floor. So that was a lot of fun. And Maran, thank you very, very much for being our guide today and for talking to our viewers. And we want to invite you, if you get a chance to join us on a tour to Israel. It's very easy to extend your trip by a couple of days. You can come down to Eilat, stay here, do some snorkeling, some scuba diving. There's a lot of fun water activities, and we hope to see you soon here in the land of Israel. What officially do you call this? Is it just the shelter? Is there more of a name?
The Shelter Hostel.
The Shelter Hostel, and we're right on the border here with Egypt and the Red Sea.
Right, and Jordan on the other side.
And Jordan on the other side. Now, for our viewers who don't know a lot about what the shelter does, what's the primary principle, the purpose of what you guys do here?
Since 4 years, we have many refugees coming. Israel has got about 30,000 refugees from Africa, most of them from Sudan or Eritrea.
Right.
And so they naturally came because we are right on the border here. We are on the border of Egypt, Jordan, over the sea is Saudi Arabia. So we got, in 20-kilometer circle, we got 4 countries. And so people come over the border here. They're Muslims. They run away from the war there, from fanatic Islam in North Sudan. South Sudanese who are Christians or animists. And they come to Eilat. And the first thing they come to, they hear about the shelter and they come here.
Okay.
And so we were almost a refugee camp here. And many became believers. Well, of course, with the refugees came many people have problems. Many people, families that are divided, families that are split up. And so, for example, I gave you this one family that came. The father was an alcoholic, and he's in jail now. And the mother is somewhere walking around Tel Aviv. They couldn't care for the kids, or they didn't care for the kids. I don't know exactly what's the story. So naturally, they became part of our family. Little boy Sunday and Daniel, his brother. And although they're not officially adopted, but they were taken into our family.
Right, right.
Our daughter and son-in-law, they're taking care of them now, together with the little baby Amalia. So anyway, we have people there like Abraham who lost his father in the war there, in a grenade and in Sudan, and he lost his leg, and his mother got also shrapnels.
Okay, so that was from the Civil War?
And he's from the Civil War, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so Abraham came here, and through your help, we've been able to give him, every year he needs a new leg because he's growing.
We want you to see where it is that your finances go. People, sometimes they think, well, I give to an organization, and we know it goes somewhere, but we're not sure specifically what it does. We want to show you today specifically where it goes, because it's making a huge difference here. What a really diverse program that we were able to put together today. We started off way down in Eilat at the Red Sea. We got to go to the Tabernacle of Moses in National Park of Timna. We got to see a lot, we got to do a lot as a family. And now I'm standing here in Jerusalem, just outside the gates of the old city of Jaffa. Oh, it just finished, the old church bells were ringing in the background. It's just, I don't want to use the term a magical place because that's reserved for Disney, but there's something really special about this place. When we come here, when we see it, when we walk around, the culture really gets into us. Seeing the tabernacle, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, being able to stand there and actually see the distances and see the actual sizes, it really helped put the Bible places into perspective. And that's what we strive to do. Everything we do on the show, the teaching, what we call our walk and talk segments, like walking through the tabernacle, the fun things that we try to show sometimes on the show, that Israel just isn't dust and camels and antiquities and archaeological digs, but you can go parasailing, you can go snorkeling and swimming with the dolphins, you can have so much fun. And I hope that all the work that we put into the show comes out and that you get to enjoy it and that you get to benefit from it. But one of the best ways to benefit is to come with us right here to the Holy Land. Go to the website, firstcentury.tv, find out when we're coming next. If you're technologically inclined, you can also go to Twitter, which is @Joe Amaral Tweet. You can go to Facebook, you can go to the website, you can call us, you can mail us. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of us. What I enjoy doing is reading the really positive emails that we get from you guys, the viewers. We've even got show ideas from viewers, and we've actually gone ahead with them and put them on the program. So send them in to us. Stay in touch with us. Come back and visit our website and our Facebook. Stay in touch with what we're doing. Guys, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on First Century Foundations.